don't we just make them all different versions of cleric? If you're a DM and you don't think your own world is interesting, you have some changes to make. And I killed off every single player character.
Hello everybody, welcome back for the first time to Split Decision, a show where we'll be discussing things that we have way too many opinions on while playing our own separate games. And let me emphasize, we will not be talking about the games we are playing. Not once. I am here with my good friend Austin. Say hi, Austin.
Hi, Austin.
Hey man, if you could cut one class out of D&D, which one would you choose? Let's talk about it.
So, I this is the question that when you brought it up intrigued me the most. And first I kind of want to get what you think I would say, and then I'll tell you my answer right after. But what do you think I'm going to say?
Maybe like sorcerer. I feel like you might pick sorcerer, but the ones I've seen people talk about the most is rogue. My personal opinion is ranger. I feel like you could totally, control V ranger out of something and it'd be just fine.
So the one that you would pick is ranger?
The one I pick is ranger. The one I think you chose is something like sorcerer.
Okay, you're close. It's not exactly sorcerer. For me, it's warlock.
Warlock, okay.
And my reasoning is I think a lot of these classes serve their own function, whereas warlock is basically just trying to be a special version of a cleric. You know what I mean? They get their power from an outwardly entity.
Like conceptually, you mean? So you're saying when you're saying this, you're saying it conceptually. There's no reason for a warlock to exist.
Yes, conceptually, you just replace a deity with either like an infernal being or an eldritch monster. So instead, so you get eldritch stuff instead of your channel divinities.
Yeah,
but I'm like, you get sorcerer. I think sorcery points is enough of a change and enough of like a fun thing to use, whereas warlocks try to balance itself by having essentially strong as fuck cantrips, but they only have like a very small number of spells. I just think curating out warlock level content into the cleric, and then any cool eldritch shit left over, they can try to morph into the sorcerer with sorcery points, and I think that's the move to make.
So here's my thing. I actually think the idea of warlocks, the way that warlocks work, of having their spells cast at the highest possible level that you can, considering it's like you have very little spell slots. So the little spell slots that you have, having them be the strongest form of what they are, I think is actually really cool. I do get where you're coming from though, because conceptually you don't really need warlocks in this world, other than for an idea of like, hey, maybe we don't want clerics to be like sort of taking out all that dimension. We want them to be generally like good aligned, right? And then using sorcerers to like fuck around with that. Yeah, I can see that. I do think the idea of having packs is different from having like the bloodlines, which is what sorcerers do. Interesting. So you went more so for like an approach of is it like really necessary?
Yeah. And honestly, I think my second place pick would be fighter.
I was thinking you were gonna say fighter too, but I thought you liked fighter just a little bit more than that.
I do really like fighter, and that's probably the secret reason why I didn't pick it. But honestly, if you got rid of fighter, just make every other martial class have more varied and different combat options. And after how much I've complained about Naal as a ranger, and how much I understand that rangers aren't the favorite, or maybe even that conceptually rich of a martial class, but I really like if there was just a class dedicated to like beast tamers and the soldiers that play within the realm of the Feywild or druidic stuff. I think there's enough of a pull for that. Whereas I think if you got rid of warlock, you could make every other magical class more interesting, and especially you can make the cleric less of a cleric and more of it's a cleric and it's a warlock, and you're this if you make like those would be the subclasses of the types of being or class that gets magic from an external being, whether it's a pact with a god or a pact with a fey creature or a pact with a genie or whatever. Or hexblade is honestly the coolest, but
so here's my thing. Okay, so let me tackle this first. I want to say fighter I thought about as well, but here's why I said I didn't claim fighter as the one that I would delete. I think fighter is such a good multi-class class to use. Terrible class just by itself, I feel like. Unless you're like a very specific playstyle, I don't see anybody playing fighter by itself and having like the most fun with it. I think similar things with Bard, if I'm being transparent, even though I always play Bard. But
yeah, you is multi-class now.
Yeah, it's because the idea of look, how well does it stand on by itself as a class, and also if we got rid of it, would multi-classing be harder for other classes, right? I think fighter fits in well for a lot of different both martial and spellcasting classes. So in that sense, I wouldn't want that one gone. I'd want it to stay there. Lots of fun things you could do with the subclasses. It plays around with playstyle a lot. Also, Battlemaster is great. Here's why I say Ranger over something like Warlock. I think Warlock has a certain thing with the Eldritch Blast being its like iconic thing, as well as all those Eldritch invocations, as well as conceptually the idea of getting your power from someone else through a deal that you've made with them, essentially sort of binding you to it, sort of like a contract. It's a little different from something like a cleric where the idea is that you call upon them and they aid you. And similar in the difference from Paladin, where the idea is like you are their warrior, you're the champion. With the Warlock, it's very much the rogue of spellcasting, in my opinion. And I like the idea that there's something there for when people want to play something just like a little bit edgy, or they want to play it like there's a certain like persona that you attribute to Warlocks, right? I don't think the same thing about Ranger. I think with Ranger, it's just about everything that you would put for Ranger as like a pro for why it should exist. I would say arguably you could probably just copy and paste that to another class and be just fine. For example, Beastmaster, if you're talking about the subclass Beastmaster, like the controlling of creatures, absolutely can go over to Druid. The idea of like, hey, they're the scout. They go and they patrol and they have like sort of are your navigator in tougher terrain, certain environments. You could pass that off to Rogue. The idea of being a hunter, being someone who goes out in nature and hunts, absolutely could pass that off to Fighter. There's like just about every aspect that I can imagine for Ranger that makes it what it is. Besides maybe the fact that you're like, it's like it can cast spells too. Like you could also pass that on to like, if we really want every class to be able to cast spells, you could also pass that off to Fighter as well. So I just don't think that there's like an inherent thing with Rangers where I'm like, they really need to exist. Without the Ranger class, no other class would be able to pick up the hole that they left. I don't think that's the case with Ranger.
Interesting. So we kind of came at it from similar perspectives where we both saw a class that we were like, I think you could just put this stuff in other classes.
Exactly.
And the game would be just fine.
It would honestly even be, I couldn't say it would be better, just because this is the reason why I said Ranger instead of Warlock. I don't think that if you, like, I feel like if you get rid of Warlock, you're missing out on a lot of like fun stuff there. If you get rid of Ranger, I feel like you're literally missing nothing out.
Well, I see it as if I get rid of, I mean, honestly, Ranger is high on the list of classes that you could just get rid of. But the problem with, if we want to take this from a meta standpoint, the Ranger is so closely tied into the lore of D&D, the Rangers are kind of the one of the foremost archetypes somehow, even though
Mhm.
they're not the most played class. But you have like Aragorn, who is literally called the Ranger. You have a whole book titled called like Ranger's Apprentice.
Right.
There's so much of the hero's journey and other stuff baked into the Ranger that I think almost from a historical and living out the fantasy aspect, I get why there's a space for it.
Uh-huh.
Although I do think, weirdly enough, less so than fighter, because like how you said, anything a ranger could do, you can play that onto a class. I think you can just get rid of the fighter class and make every other fighting class more interesting. But at the same time, the reason why I'm thinking warlock over ranger is I see it just as, you're right, it's like a space for edgy cleric, but you could just that's a subclass right there. You know what I mean?
Nah, but
like,
it's a totally different, like it's a big overhaul of what a cleric is. It's a huge overhaul, because the idea of Eldritch Blast, the idea of that being available for all clerics doesn't make sense. So you'd have to make it just for the one subclass.
Well, they
Eldritch
wouldn't
Invocations.
be Eldritch Invocations or Channel Divinities. It would be some sort of morphing on the two. Getting my ass kicked.
Sure. But and sort of like that. So a similar argument that I'm making with the idea of like, how much effort does it take to get rid of this class and incorporate it into other classes? I would say is the same reason why I say getting rid of fighter may not be the call, because there's a lot of things that fighters do that is really hard to spread out to another martial class. Like if you were to get rid of fighter, I feel like you'd have to put it into ranger. And then what would ranger be? Is ranger the guy who attacks like a shit ton? Is ranger the guy who gets higher crits or gets more feats?
Well, ranger,
or do you make everybody.
Ranger is already the one of the classes that you are better at multiple hits and are better at mass combat in general. Because your ranger archetypes are either a bow and arrow user, so
right, which you could do with a fighter,
right, or your other archetype, but same thing with the ranger. Ranger has horde breaker. They have these other shit,
which once again is a hunter, which I feel like you could just pump into a fighter class. Like the idea is that if we just made a ranger like a subclass, like, and we just broke up the type of subclasses for ranger and we just put that into fighter, I feel like that's just fine. Like I feel like that's not something that harms the game too much.
Because you would saying you could make a beastmaster, like a beastmaster fighter, and then a fighter that's better at longer range or whatever.
Yes,
which
I might
kind of already a thing.
For sure. I would be like kind of like how Druid has Swarm Keeper, I think is the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they have a class. They have Druids have subclasses about or actually I think Swarm Keepers are honestly Ranger even. I think that's right. I think it's Ranger subclass. Whatever. It's the idea of like these things that are tied to nature and having a relationship with animals is something that's also very like Druid coded. And there's Druid subclasses for like summoning hello creatures. So there could absolutely be a Druid subclass that's all about having like one singular animal companion that's like your ride or die.
But you lose the martial aspect of the ranger, which is like important to it. That's why I'm thinking it's easier to make like to bleed fighter into every other class than it is to try to force these more specific classes into other ones. Yeah, which I guess is what I'm trying to do with warlock, but
right. but the thing is this, right? So if let's say that we took the animal and spellcasting aspects of ranger and just pumped that towards druid and had the martial benefits of like say a hunter's mark and pump that towards a fighter, you can absolutely just multi-class, and then right then and there, bam, you have a beastmaster, and you could be like, oh, that's extra steps. But that's essentially creating a playstyle that's arguably more effective, because then you're better off. You have all the fighter benefits of being a martial class, but then you have like the healing and support benefits of being a druid, while also having that beast companion that you would arguably have switched over to a druid subclass. Whereas with warlock, and this is why I was mentioning like how difficult it is to switch it around. If the idea is we pump that towards cleric or sorcerer, it's you'd have to kind of make an overhaul in order to maintain the strength and the unique personality that comes with being a warlock. I feel like it takes more steps than what it would be to translate ranger into fighter / druid.
Why? Oh, how many more steps would it take besides altering eldritch stuff to sorcery stuff and then
because
repainting?
I don't think conceptually warlock fits in with sorcerer. I feel like warlock fits in categorically a little bit more with cleric, right?
Yeah.
Ability casting wise, you're right. It does fit closer to what sorcerers do, so it would make more sense. But the idea of sorcerers is that it's in your bloodline. The idea of warlocks is that it's through contract.
No, I know. I mean, because because the thing we lose is eldritch invocations. We would replace that with channel divinities.
Gotcha.
But so that I'm saying we would carry down that over to any of the sorcerer. Mechanically, we would give that to the sorcerers, because from a story standpoint, it's just dark version of a cleric.
Yeah, yeah, I think in essence, yeah, that's right. It is essentially just a darker version of cleric. I want to say it's something more than that. I want to say it's like, oh, hey, it's being bound to a contract versus being bound to your god, to a point where it's like against your will, right? Like the start of it is through a necessity, whereas as a cleric, it's more so of like finding faith in this god and being like, hey, like this is the one that I trust. I guess that's not always necessarily true. That also depends on how you make the character. But that's generally my idea of like cleric versus warlock, and I feel like with warlock, you can play around with that idea a little bit more.
Hear me out.
I don't imagine. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
We axe warlock and we axe paladin, and we just make them all different versions of cleric.
Paladin is oof. Honestly, I think you could absolutely just get rid of Paladin, but I do think you could get rid of Paladin too. But I think having a cleric be one that's more attuned to spellcasting and having Paladin more attuned to martial, I feel like you absolutely could just blend that together and be like, hey, you're a holy class. Good luck. Figure that out.
Literally, you just get a really strong cleric, and then honestly, Matt, you could give fighter a holy version of Eldritch Knight, and then that's just another version of Paladin.
Exactly right. So what we established now is Warlock, Ranger, Paladin, and if you really want to, you really could honestly just split up the feats of fighter. We just disperse all that, and it's just cleric. It's just sorcerer, wizard. It's only barbarian.
Well, yeah, no, and wizard and bard are also together, because it's actually, Matt, hear me out. So if you make a pact with another being, that's one class. If you work hard for yourself, that's a different class. And if you're born with it, that's also the other different class. So wizard, artificer, bard, same class. Druid, sorcerer, same class.
I love it. I think that's perfect. I feel like we really spearheaded a big change for D&D. And I feel like simplifying is just the way to go, is what we just determined.
Yep.
Amazing. Hey man, if you had to pick one experience to have in D&D, would you rather have it Sandbox or Railroad? Let's talk about it.
All right. Do we want to define these terms really quick, or or do we think we know it generally enough?
I feel like we know it generally enough, but for the sake of like we're both on the same page, I feel like it's important. I see Railroad as very much like storytelling, where every step of the way you as a player, you're being led somewhere. It's not that you don't have any autonomy. It's more so that you are the plot is set in stone. You're a character in a story but the story is something that's set in stone. It's just how you influence it really is what matters. Whereas with Sandbox is you create the story. There's a story out there, sure, but it doesn't happen. But you're placed in it, and you have to go find it. So with that in mind, with those definitions in place, which one do you think you lean more towards? And let's make it more interesting. Let's say, which one do you lead in towards as a DM versus which one do you lead in towards as a player?
Wow. As a DM, I definitely prefer to railroad.
Okay, that's fair. That's
and fair. As a player, obviously the real answer for both is there's a happy medium to be found.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely always more on the camp of railroad. So I think if I were to have to say just one for each one, I think it would have to be railroad.
Okay. Interesting. So let's talk about it. Let's figure out why. Let's start with the DM.
Yeah.
Because we're both DMs first and then players second.
Well, I've played more than I've DM'd.
For sure, but I feel like in our mindsets. Anyways, you as a DM, you say you prefer to railroad. Why is that?
So we haven't talked about it yet, but the way I like to prepare, I always leave myself a little bit of room for improvisation and stuff. So I don't plan out every detail, but I always want to reach certain points, and I'm not going to force the story in my player's face, although I'm going to try to make it attractive. And I'm always concerned about guiding them towards a certain spot, whether that spot is driven by them or that spot is necessitated by the fact that I need them there. But I haven't ever really done like so much of it. You have to go here. It's always just been, you can kind of only go this direction. I like to keep my railroading slightly deceptive and slightly subtle and secret, although I do give you like, it's like a telltale thing where you have choices, but you're going to end up in the same place anyways.
Yeah, I what I have experienced, and this is why I say, because I think you and Nick both would probably answer railroad to this question, because I noticed that both of you guys, it's not necessarily that there's like nowhere to go, but it is at times the feeling of things are happening to you, you have to choose how you respond to it, and in order to resolve these conflicts, you will have to go to this place. You can make the choice not to, but then that plot doesn't happen. Which, if you're aware, D&D is a storytelling game. We are all storytellers. You have to kind of cooperate in order to make this story work, right? Like none of the Avengers movies ever happened if anybody in the Avengers just goes like, yeah, no, we're not going to be superheroes anymore. Yeah, so yes, I get where you're coming from, and the idea of like you sort of suggest, it's this idea, the illusion of choice in the sense of being like, hey, like what do you guys do? But also there is a correct answer. This is what you guys should do.
Yeah, because I think we learned a lot from watching Critical Role in the beginning of our careers.
Right.
Although I do think you nowadays would try to emulate more of a Brennan Lee Mulligan type game than you would a Matt Mercer game. Although I definitely think we picked up something from Matt Mercer, and because I would say I think Critical Role is more of a railroad, and D20 has to be to a degree too, because they both have to be like entertaining shows, but especially more so Campaign 1 and 2, because I hear Campaign 3, I'm not all the way through it. But I hear Matt goes more lax on that. But I think we picked up the fact that he has an idea and knows where he wants everyone to end up, because he believes that's what'll be most fun for everyone. And that's, I think, where we're trying to do that. So I'm trying to get everyone to a spot where I'm like, this is so cool. They're going to love this. I want them here. And I'm kind of just going to get you guys there. Unless I give you, unless that was never fully part of the plan. For example, in Space D&D, you guys drastically altered the ending of the story by essentially taking out Big E early, where he was someone who could have been and would have been an oppressive force throughout the entire thing, and you would have had to deal with him at the end. You would have had to deal with this character, and I always knew you had to deal with this character. My end goal for you was to deal with this character. You guys made the choice to deal with it way earlier than you needed to. And so cool, you did it. But I still had an end game for him. And even though it was altered, the necessary criteria was met, just not the way I thought it was going to work out. You know what I mean?
In that way, you would say that it's a little bit more. It's not railroad, as in like choke you down, like force you to go this way. There's a point A to point B. So how you get to point B is sort of your own decision, but regardless, we're going to point B.
Yeah, 100%. You got that. Essentially, instead of a straight line, you're within this oval, and this is a dirt oval path, and so you can kind of go up and down, but eventually you have to keep going to the right, and eventually you will reach the end. And ovals, they kind of converge towards the center, and so no matter what, you'll end up where I need you.
Okay, I like that. And then as a player, you feel you also like railroad more. Yeah. And why is that?
I think it's because I'm going to reference our games, and it's not necessarily even you as our DM.
Interesting.
I think when we play more railroady games, the other players have more ideas on what to do, and so they're more active. Whereas I think when in a more open game there, we're just kind of like, I guess I'll just do this. And I don't know. It's like, I don't know what to do.
I'll add on to that, and I'll sort of counter that a little bit in the sense of it's not necessarily that, like in, it's more than just in a railroaded game, players are going to be more proactive. I think what it is that in railroaded games, you feel like there's less time to accomplish to have those small interactions. There's less time to do those things that you would be able to do all the time in a sandbox game, or sandbox campaign rather. So you have to like kind of take advantage of the moments when you have them, like the in between, the after the big arc, the before even. So it does feel like the players take more action, because there is like an idea of like, hey, you gotta do something, because otherwise this story's going and you're missing your chance.
Yeah, but I don't even necessarily think all railroady campaigns necessitate that sense of urgency. But I think any good sandbox campaign will have to momentarily become like, we'll have to have railroady mini sections in it. Otherwise, I think it's just a different kind of game than what I'm used to playing. Because it's totally reasonable to play a D&D campaign where it's kind of like villain of the arc, or we just go from session to session, whereas you and I think much more, not liturgically. I would literally, but not in the literally this, in the literary sense. Literarily, we think about the story. We're very story focused.
Yes.
Players and campaigners. And so I think a 100% true sandbox campaign would just be like, if you and I were to play in it, I think it would literally just be like more slice of life and more like us building over this thing instead of playing along to the DM story. And I think we mostly play in games where no matter how much freedom we have, there is an end goal and an end sight.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And I think also part of what it is too is that I think I generally am the only one who has very long what's it called, spanning campaigns in mind. I I'm the type of guy when I'm DMing, I expect to have a campaign that runs over the span of a year to 2 years. I'm not expecting a campaign that will be done in like 20 sessions. I'm expecting a campaign that's going to be done in like 50 to 60. um, uh,
That's
so
a lie.
yeah,
It's
so
over 100.
it's probably over 100. I think that's exaggeration only because I don't count them. I don't count the sessions.
I've counted every single one of mine.
Because you can, because you're able to. It's the thing. Nick's also able to as well, because yeah, it's just railroading is a lot easier and lot more necessary in shorter campaigns. When you don't want that game to last forever, you kind of have to railroad a little bit, because if you don't, it's going to last forever.
Dude, I was
Yeah.
playing a Pathfinder 2 starter box thing, and I was like, this will be a one shot, maybe 2 if it gets long. And they did it in 3, and we actually still have I added in a secret boss fight at the end that they want to do that we haven't done yet, and that was like over a year ago. But dude, a 1 to 4 shot, my god.
I get you. Now let me take this chance to segue into me explaining why I'm at the exact opposite side of the spectrum. And you know this.
Why did I? Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I am absolutely a guy who, as a DM and as a player, prefer Sandbox. And now keep that in mind. I haven't actually played as a player in a game that's like truly Sandbox in the way that I try to implement mine in as a DM. But let me start with why, as a DM, I prefer Sandbox. I think I love the idea that the world has a lot of shit to do, and that you, as the players, can design your own story. I think as in the relationship between player and DM, there's often like a misconception that the player is like that they're the ones having fun and the DM is the one who's working his ass off sweating behind the screen. I don't think it has to be that way. I think that's a misconception. I think people do that because they have an expectation of that's what they have to do. But I am always more so in the line of thought of, hey, like we can both have fun together. It's super fun, super interesting for me to watch players, what decisions they make and where they decide to go, who they decide to align to, and what style of play they do. And I feel like Sandbox allows you to make all those decisions as a player, which therefore will allow me to have more enjoyment out of it. If I'm playing as Railroad, I feel like the enjoyment of the game is more heavily dictated on how well I prepared and how well I managed everything, and how well I paced everything. Whereas if it's Sandbox, we can have fun, even if it's a slow draw out and we're spending many sessions not doing something that's like super amazing. Sandbox gives the opportunity for a story to still be told, right? To reference, or I guess I'll just say it like this, right? It's the idea of, if you as the player, if I'm making this big world, I think naturally as a DM, I think the world's interesting. If you're a DM and you don't think your own world is interesting, you have some changes to make. So it's naturally interesting.
Crackle, pop, baby.
Yeah. So it's naturally, I think my world that I've created is incredibly interesting. I think there's a lot of things that are fun and exciting about it. Now, how do I translate that to the players? Well, I'm not going to translate all of that. I'm going to figure out what you as the players want to play the game like. How do you want this world to be? Because if you're a guy who likes combat more and likes being the guy who beats up bad guys, then I guess we're going to a part of the world where you're fighting bad guys all the time and combat is like a major thing. If you're a type of player who likes political intrigue, we're going to a city. We're going to a place where there's a big government. If you're the type of player who likes, just developing your backstory and sort of like sharing that backstory with these other players and sort of like having your character arcs, then let's go to the part of the world where you guys come from, or a part of the world where it can influence your story arc. Let's go tackle that. But if I'm railroading the game, you don't get the autonomy to have any of those decisions. And the story isn't about you. It's about the events that happen around you. That's an exaggeration, but it's my general, that's like the strong reason why I love Sandbox as a DM, because I think there's just too much fun to be had in watching your players make that choice, and as the DM sort of like locking in and being like, oh, they did that, okay, then these NPCs would react this way, this city would probably respond this way to that. And if this character, if I had a player who just suddenly decided I'm going to kill this guy, then I go, great, so this character's dead. How does that influence that part of the world? Does it at all, or is it inconsequential? Because D&D is a game of cause and effect. That's what makes it fun for me, is sort of connecting those puzzle pieces after you guys decide what you do.
Can I ask you if you have a couple of examples, maybe one from each major campaign you've run?
Sure. The people watching won't know what we're talking about. Let me take our current, or I say current, but it's been a while. So Critical Fail is the name of the campaign that I've run. We're on campaign 2. We've already I've started making plans for campaign 3, but campaign 2 is what we're in the midst of. For example, if we're talking about that autonomy, that intrigue of autonomy of choice, the world itself of Crit Fail campaign 2 is by default one where it's all about your guys' choices, right? Mm-hmm. You guys can choose to be aligned with the Runic Empire, which is a highly industrialized civilization, or you could align, if you're interested, you can go and explore and align yourself with the Eurasian Unity, which is similar, technologically advanced, but more aligned with nature and preserving that nature. Or if you guys wanted like heavy combat and just be down gritty Mad Max style, absolutely go the fuck down to the Barrens, where it's all fight for survival every day. And who you guys choose to align yourselves with, regardless of where you spend more time, whoever you choose to align yourselves with also impacts the story. If I could say specifically, I would say you guys started off in the Runic Empire, spent most of your time in the Runic Empire, but clearly seem to be aligning yourselves more with the Baron people, right? You'd say that's pretty accurate?
Say that again?
You guys in Critical Fail, campaign 2, you guys spend more time in the Runic Empire. Your identities are leaned a little bit more towards the Runic Empire, but you align yourself in terms of alliances and allegiances more so with the people of the Barrens.
Yes, that's accurate.
The story changes entirely if it was the other way around. If you guys had made your characters all more so from the Barrens, and then it was like, oh, well, I actually think I fit in more so with the people of the Runic Empire, that's a totally different story. And it's a very interesting story to explore, to the point where, like, if we really wanted to, we could just absolutely snap our finger, reset the whole campaign, and this time explore it from the opposite side. But it's because you guys are choosing to play the way that you do. It's because you guys are interested in the specific NPCs that you are, right? Like, you guys aren't super interested in the Twin Emperors of the Runic Empire. You're not that interested in them. You weren't that interested in the I forget his name, but he, like, the manager system of the Sentinel program, where you guys are all like pretty much showmen for like entertainers. You're essentially streamers. You weren't super interested in that ranking system, and you weren't super interested in the idea of like what managers will do what for you. That wasn't super interesting to you guys. So if it's not interesting for you, why would I force you guys to continue to explore that system? I'd much rather I take you guys somewhere where you guys want to go, which in this case is down to the Barrens, where you guys are aligning yourself with these people who are more interesting to you. And you're doing these, like, this idea of like, you guys are fighting these like demons of the Barrens. You guys are going on this whole hunt for them because they're more interesting to you. The idea of politics and creating this world peace, that's a necessity. That is a little bit railroading. The idea of like navigating the political
landscape?
Territories of landscape, exploring that whole thing, that is a little bit more railroady. But if you guys really didn't want to, you didn't have to. It's absolutely within your power to be like, hey, we're not going to go do that way. And that's why I like Sandbox as a DM. Furthermore, let's take the other idea that I had about if you decided to suddenly kill somebody, I'm going to be interested in that, because it then sparks ideas in my head and turns cogs in my head of what does that change about the world. Zervis, which is the character Josh plays, killed his one of his central backstory characters, which is his one of his biggest allies and relationships in his backstory, which was his father figure, killed him because their relationship is built on this environment of discovering how murder is like this art form and things like that, and his mentor teaching him that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Him killing that character did immediately make me go like, damn, you're really killing him? That's nuts. Because there was a lot of story that I wanted to happen, but nonetheless, he made that decision.
Yeah, that was nuts. That character's nuts.
It's a nuts character. It's then on me, and I was interested in this, the idea of, okay, now that central character is dead, that character was a pretty big influence in his district that he's from. So what is that district now that their central head figure, a person running the area, is now gone? Okay, how do his people who are his cohorts, who the whole thing was that he was part of a gang? Okay, well, how does his gang think now that he essentially took out their boss? Well, if the idea was that they're just like a common gang of crooks, they might not care about it. But they're different. They're more of a mafia style mob family, I think. So they're more so tied closer to each other. There's a big familial relationship, and this guy just killed the head of the family. That's a big problem. You're a traitor in their eyes. They don't fuck with you. But because of Zervis talking the way he did, he was able to navigate himself out of getting hunted down by them. They don't like him, but that doesn't mean anything necessarily that they're going to do anything to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all affected by his decisions and how he handled it. Josh made it very clear in game as his character, he did not want to get to the point where he had to kill those guys. That feeling was reciprocated. But also notice that, I mean, also because Josh hasn't been around in the games as often because he's been busy with work. But you guys he hasn't even like thought about going back to Phantasma Row. Phantasma Row, which is his district, is in the back of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that also is like a thing. It's like, hey, Phantasma Row is changing a bunch, but does Zervis know about it? Hell no. He's off doing his own thing and minding other businesses and helping you guys out. So when he gets back to Phantasma Row, he's going to find it's totally different. And will he be surprised then? Yeah, probably. Will he feel like it's unjustified? Maybe. But these are all the things that happen because of his actions, and that's what I love. The story changed because of what he decided to do. It's not all happy-go-lucky like what I originally imagined it to be, with a little bit of tragedy. Now it's just straight cause and effect. You did this. Now we're going to see if you choose to fix this or if you decide that this is just a new world that you live in.
Okay. What will you say then? Have you seen in art, has there been any super rewarding moments specifically tied to how I can't think of the word, how the sandbox format of the games?
Are there any particular examples of when it's more satisfying to do sandbox than railroad?
Or is there ever a moment?
Is that what you're asking?
Kind of. Was there ever a moment where you went like, this is why I do it for this?
Yes. Just about every major plot point that we have in the campaigns that I run, I feel that way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just about every single one. I'm like, this is why I do it, because watching you guys choose to explore this realm of questline, this realm of like exploration, that's what makes it super exciting. That's what makes it interesting. You guys are going down this way. Oh, I'm sort of like a viewer, even though I'm the one running the game and making the game and writing the game. I'm kind of like a viewer where I'm like, oh, you guys decided to go here. Oh, very interesting. Okay, so what do you guys decide to do there? Oh, you guys do this? Interesting. Okay. Now you guys are talking to this person. Oh, but you're trying to talk about that person to this person? Interesting. That's all very interesting to me. When I'm sitting there and I'm just watching you guys tell me where you want to go, that's interesting. You know what? It's not interesting. And this is what sucks about Sandbox is when the players don't take action and they don't make a choice and they don't make decisions. And that's when it's better to railroad. And so in that sense, I'd be like, with a more inactive party, a railroad is the way to go. But with a party where it's full of strong personalities, where people have things that they want to do, and they have like characters to back that up, that proactivity, Sandbox is absolutely going to be a once in a lifetime experience that you won't get ever again.
That's a good answer. Good answer.
Good answer.
I want to
Ting.
point
Show
out.
me all that.
I want to point out one of my favorite effects or externalities of your railroading, or not, sorry, of your sandbox style is during campaign 1 when we legitimately, for a brief moment in time, had an arc where we joined the enemy team. Now that can be possible in certain railroad games. For example, I find myself, because I think I'm a railroader, but I'm a sandbox railroader. Like I said, I give you a pretty big oval. There's certain spots that you have to go.
Yeah.
Whereas you kind of have this like giant ass square sandbox, but we start in the center. And I think you have different endings in mind depending upon how it'll go. Disregarding the fact that they might be similar, but I really liked how, because the end game was just defeat the Titans, which, a really cool classic like D&D thing, fight the giant big god monsters, have fun doing it, but it's not all the time where you play a D&D game and then hey, you just join the villains for a bit and then play as a second. Some of the players or a different character, that was me, because I was like, well, my other character couldn't really align with it, but now I have the opportunity to play as a different character, and I only think because of how much sandbox minded you are, that's why we got to make those choices. So I really like in those games as a player when I have like the freedom to be able to do stuff like that. And yeah, I also wanted to ask you before we moved on the difference in how you saw the players react to when you used to do more railroady arcs versus when you dropped that and you said, fuck, just go nuts, kids.
Well, so a big part of why I originally started, and this is why I give it, I won't say his name because we don't play with him anymore. But I will say, I will attribute a big part of why I switched over to Sandbox to another player, Double D, who absolutely got on me and infuriated me every single second by saying, like, why did we even bother doing the story arc thing? Because at the time I was really tyrannical with doing plot arcs and getting it done within a certain time. Like, this many sessions for the arc. Hey, let's get it done. Oh, we're fucking around and we're not completing the arc. Well, the arc is going to finish. There is a time limit. There's going to be it's going to conclude. So if you guys don't want to tackle it, no problem. We'll just move on, and that arc will not be resolved for you. Which is a super tyrannical way of approaching it. But no, Double D opened up my eyes to the idea of like, hey, let's not make it all stressful, and like, let's not make it super like it's work. And that's when I switched over. When I was railroading, it was really great because it was really fun to see personalized arcs for each character, and I did it often. Personalized arc for each character, developing their character, and that everyone else was sort of like, hey, this is their arc. Let's go on the ride with them. We're friends, we're teammates. Because of that, that's why we're with you. And for that, I really, really loved. I don't get that as much in Sandbox, admittedly. But because with Sandbox, it's absolutely more so the idea of like, hey, you guys have to determine what your relationship is with each other. If you can't do that, it's going to be tough. With Sandbox, I get a lot more character moments. I get a lot of more personal character moments. In Sandbox, I see a lot more of people, of these really interesting moments happening with individuals. Whereas when I was railroading, I saw a bit more of how you guys as a team were working through stuff. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, in terms of personal moments where you saw the change, I definitely think AJ, Brody, actually, honestly, all the players that we have in campaign 2 right now have a better introspective story going on than I would say most of the characters had campaign 1. Or sorry, not necessarily more than campaign 1, because the arcs very much had a lot of these moments, but it was a lot more, it feels way more grounded in a different way, where you see the change be more incremental, as opposed to like, I went on a hero's journey in a day or a few weeks, and I've come out different. And now I'm with my friends who, oh, you haven't had your turn yet? Okay, cool. Whereas now it's like, hey, a major life event happened. All right, we're all reacting in this way. Oh, if something else happened, okay, now we're all reacting in this way. And it's easier to get where we're at in this campaign. Admittedly, we could also just be better players, but I think the game that you run at the Sandbox game has better moment-to-moment storytelling.
When I was railroading and I was designing these story arcs, these character arcs for people, it was very much off of my perception of what would be considered growth for those characters. In this case with Sandbox, it's more so you guys really get to decide how your characters grow and if they even need to grow in certain elements. One of my key things that I take note of anytime that I see you, for example, play, we've said this, your character's name is AJ in the campaign that we run for Critical Fail Campaign 2. I think it's so deeply interesting that when you went back home after your father had essentially disowned you following the death of your siblings, you in that moment made the decision not to speak to your father because you had to sneak into your own home to get the wealth that you had stashed away, because why would you ever think that you were going to be denied access to this home? You had to sneak in, and in that moment the choice was there to go speak to your father. And I think that I would recall even in moments sort of being like, oh, like your father might be in this room, sort of like inching towards the idea like, hey, a discussion could happen here. If you want to confront him on why you were disowned from the family, now would be the time. But you in that moment made that decision, I'm not going to do that, which spoke very strongly about what your character was feeling in that moment. And if this was a railroaded campaign that I was running, I might have forced that interaction to happen. I feel like I would have lost that little bit of flavor from you.
Yeah. Did you want to know why I didn't talk to him?
Yeah, tell me. Yeah.
AJ needs to help keep up the facade that they don't like each other. So I think it's tragic that the best choice he thinks he could make for his father is to still act like he hates him. So I think he's keeping his father safe doing that.
And it's funny because your father in the game is doing the same thing. Hence the letter that he left to you, essentially explaining what he did, but very much, what he said, I say left for you. He was going to throw it away. He didn't think it was ever going to get to you.
Oh yeah, he doesn't know I know.
But yeah, there absolutely is the same energy matched on his end, which, makes sense, like father, like son. And that's that kind of like storytelling coincidence where what the player intends and what the DM intends just happen to sort of like mesh well to make a really beautiful story.
D&D is just improv, man. We're just trying to mind meld.
Exactly. It's all mind melding. And it's sometimes it works. In this case with you and with AJ and his father, it works. In other cases with Zervis and his father figure, it did not work.
That you're going to say with AJ and your brother after I chose to just listen to him and jump out of a plane.
No, yeah, it was a blimp. It was a Zeppelin more so. It was a high-speed Zeppelin, and it was about to crash. His brother in game told him, "Hey, jump. Here's a what's essentially a parachute." And him being the younger brother was just like, "You got it, man. I got you. I'm out of here." Jumped. And then in my head as the DM being like, oh, I didn't think that you were just going to straight up do it. I thought there was going to be like a discussion or an effort there. It's like, no, he just jumped. I'm like, all right, well, cool. You jump. I don't know if you remember my reaction, but I think I very clearly was just like, oh, okay.
I think you played it off well, because you told me after the session, you were like, I thought you were going to have a full-on conversation with your brother. I was getting ready for this moment, and I was like, oh, man. I was like, did I do D&D bad?
No, I think you were like, I think you were like, oh, he just told me to do that, so I just did it. So he was like, my intention was to get down there and do something and help I think it was help a kid out. You were gonna jump down and like help a kid out, so his brother who you met earlier wouldn't have to worry about them or something like that. I think you did that. You had some heroic intent.
Yeah, I'm a noble guy.
Yeah, but I remember very distinctly, like absolutely like an asshole. When you landed, I was just like, yeah, so you hit the ground and then you find that little kid, and he's like looking lost, and then before you can even say anything, his brother comes over, sweeps up, grabs him, and so
that did
so
happen.
like an asshole, I just absolutely took away the one thing that you did to be a hero. But I remember my reasoning for that, and my reasoning was it was to showcase that even him, the guy who was like the right hand man to your brother, even he had also jumped out for like what's essentially a parachute. So your brother was like the last one.
Yeah.
And so I remember that's why I did it, but then immediately after I was just like, oh, I did a bad thing. Because you were like, oh, I guess I'll just go somewhere.
Yeah, what's our podcast topic on moments your DM keeps killing your family and making you feel bad about it?
It's okay. No big deal. I made a I made a reference at the start of the campaign where I said that AJ and his family is essentially Bloodstones. The Bloodstones being the antagonistic family of campaign 1, the ones that they sided with momentarily. Their family was very much also like death ridden, but very tightly knit. Very tightly knit. And then I was like, hey, their story revolves around death. AJ also very similarly has the same thing happening with his family. And so I was like, AJ and the Dawn Walkers, which is his family, they are essentially the Bloodstones in campaign 2. Just, not bad guys.
Well, I mean, we're capitalists, so.
Yeah, we're pragmatic people.
Yeah, I don't.
We're down to earth.
Well, I will
say, I just found out recently that down to earth does not mean what I thought it meant.
What did you think it meant?
I thought down to earth meant like chill. And I got into a very heated back and forth debate with my coworker where she was adamant that it was not that. And I found out she was in fact correct and I was wrong.
I do think people who are chill are usually people who are down to earth, though. So I can't discredit you for that, really.
Well, I thought down to earth like mellow, like you're chilling on like a couch. That's what I think of when I think of down to earth.
That means you're grounded in reality, right?
It means you're logical. Yeah, grounded in reality, you're logical. And I was just like, no, I was literally on the treadmill next to her talking about it. We're just ranting back and forth. And she's like, no, well, I'm gonna search it up right now. And I was like, search it up, you're gonna see I'm right. And she searched it up and immediately I was wrong. And I was like, all right, I can admit when I'm wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Actually, you were talking a lot about my perspective about Sandbox. Let me actually ask you a question. With railroading, was there any point in when you were DMing where you were like, hey, this is a really highlight moment that would not have happened had I not railroaded this campaign?
Oh, man.
I have an example of one. There's one I can think of, but I'll let you go first.
Well, so I'll talk about one where I sort of, and I kind of did let my players know beforehand, or I gave them a hint that something was going to happen, because I was like, okay, you guys are going to make 2 characters. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, we're going to do like a little prologue thing. You're going to be level 10, and then it's just to get the feel of the game. Because we were playing, it was 5th edition D&D, but it was using someone's homebrewed Final Fantasy 14 classes and races. And we did that. They did level 10. We did a 3-session prologue, and I killed them at the end. And I did this in order to set up a character to be an antagonist later, and I needed that to happen for the story. Right. But what I really liked is I play with the friends that I play with, I've done improv with. And so you would love playing D&D with them as well because of how much into RP you are. But they got so into it, and there was instantly, they felt like they had camaraderie, and we had a lot of fun. And because they understood the story that was kind of happening, that they knew these characters were less sacred to me in terms of keeping them alive. They took more risks. They took more chances. It allowed them to play the game more as a game and have focus on the fun. And then when it got to the story moments, I was able to hit them over the head with the story. And then they reacted strongly to it, and they were like, "Damn you, Austin!" Like, my friend gave me a drawing he had made that a friend made of his character, and he said, "To remember what you did to me," which was kill his character. But I was always going to kill his character.
Yeah, I'm glad that you made that executive decision of I am going to kill your character. It's plot driven.
Yep, it is plot driven. Very much so. But that's the one I can think of.
Funny.
And they enjoyed it, so they had a lot of fun with it. But I try not to do that, anything like that big, without prefacing it beforehand. Because like I said, big oval, like, it's, my railroading is pretty sandboxy because I try to hide it. And what was your example?
Yeah, my example for you of what I thought worked really, really well. It was a railroad. I actually just had a last second switch up in perspective where I was like, I guess that's not really railroad, is it? There was a point where we reached a crossroads in deciding where to proceed. This was in Mage Blight, which is your sci-fi campaign. We were in a world, a totally different world, super far away, probably in a whole different galaxy. We got sucked into a wormhole. We sent there. And we had all these factions. We had 3 factions we could choose, which is this one bad guy who we were going to fight, who was absolutely tormenting us. And then there was the one of our players, their in character dad, who was very notoriously a bad guy. And then there was these guys who were very obviously good guys, but us being the players, we're like, we're not. At least on my end, I was like, I don't know that I want the obvious choice.
Yeah.
And you
incite chaos.
Point where, yeah, well, it's not that I incite chaos. It's that I'll get into it after. So you had, as a DM, laid before us, hey, these are the options, these are what you guys have going for you, and let me go into a little bit of detail into what you can expect if you pick one of these sides, so you know what you're dealing with. And I was like, well, in hindsight, as I was talking, I was like, maybe that's not railroad, but what it is it's a confined space of sandbox, which is exactly what you've been talking about this entire time. It's showing, hey, you do have a choice. Your experience does differ depending on what you choose to do, but you have 3 choices and you're going to have to pick one. And that was the point that I remember us all having a lot of fun, just sort of talking that out and really deciding and strategizing and being like, well, who are we going for? Well, surely we're not going for the guy who's been fucking with us the entire time. So do we pick the guy who's very obviously a bad guy or a guy who's very obviously a good guy? Well, we could go with the guys who are good guys, but we're definitely not going to go with the guy who's fucking with us the entire time.
You guys also didn't want to go with. You didn't want to go with the good guys because you instantly made a bit calling them short, and then it was just too funny. And then you guys were like, "Well, we can't go with them; they're too short."
No, my big thing, and I've said this time and time again, in your campaigns, you have a tendency to reference previous campaigns or characters that you've made. It will never stop being funny to me to immediately be like, I hate those people, bro. I don't want to see you, bro. If I like when you bring in a character that's a reoccurring character from the first iteration of a sci-fi themed campaign that we ran, I'm gonna see this guy, I'm gonna be like, oh, I don't want to side with you ever.
Like, I was trying to put closure on a separate campaign, and I guess I did.
No closure necessary. I got all the closure I needed when that campaign ended. I don't.
You weren't even there for the end.
It wasn't even officially an end, I don't think. Anywho.
No, that's true. We did secretly end it. Spoilers for those listening. For anyone who's listening that was in that other campaign.
I really like how you handle railroading. As a player, like you said, I am also very deeply immersed in roleplay. So 100%, like when I get the opportunity to in your campaigns to do roleplay, I do that shit. To your point of me being a chaotic player, it's not that I'm a chaotic player. It's that I know what stereotypically good characters do, and I don't like that. I don't think it's interesting to see a guy who's always good and like the typical paladin, right? Lawful good. I hate that, bro. I don't ever want to be the guy who's just like, I have a set of morals. I'm just going to follow to it every single step of the way. I can't stand that. I'm like, you couldn't catch me doing that. I want my characters to have, that's why all my characters are like straight, either neutral or chaotic neutral, right?
Mm-hmm.
I make all my decisions based off of the moment. And so that's why characters like I make like Raphael or Oz, the characters I make who are seen as chaotic, well, I guess Carter as well. They're seen as chaotic. They're more so they're responding to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you introduce characters to me when I'm a player and you introduce a character to me, if they're very obviously a good guy, I don't trust that, because people who are very obviously good guys, who are purely good and actually good, are very seldom. So I'm looking at all these people who are like good guys, quote unquote, and I'm just like, you either are obnoxiously good or you are you're someone who's going to betray me.
Can I have you tell the audience the time you met this most recent iteration of a character from a previous campaign, the Colonel? Because your face gave me so much, Matt. I love pissing you off like that now. It's so fun.
Yeah. Well, I was actually thinking about, I don't recall if I told you this, but I actually think that if you can piss off a player, you're doing a pretty good job. If you can make a player mad at a character that's existed in the game, you're doing a pretty good job, and you set yourself up for success. Here's what he's talking about. There's a guy who's called the Colonel, who once again is a repeating character. He's a character that Austin has brought back from a previous campaign, which already off the rip, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking hate this guy. And it's a character who I didn't even like in the first campaign that we ran, because I thought he was too foolhardy of a leader. He was too foolhardy of a leader. He made an arrangement with a bunch of people he had never met before, where he was going to give them every single thing they ever asked for and full access to everything. I was like, this guy's a foolhardy leader. I cannot trust him, and we're trusting our lives to him. That's ridiculous. Anyways, we're seeing him again in this next campaign, and I'm seeing him. I'm like, oh, amazing. We find ourselves in a situation where we're finally about to meet him. Okay, he has his whole squad. They're all very powerful. It's very obvious that they're very powerful. And the entire time that I'm talking to them, I'm very much an underdog in this campaign. We as a party are underdogs in this campaign. And we meet his little goons, and they're over here talking him up, and they're just like, oh, this, that. We're working with people that they're trying to fight. So it's like, oh, fuck. They're gonna fight him, but the entire time we've also been told that person that they're trying to beat up, that they're targeting and hunting down, we've been told this entire time that's a strong person. So I'm like, man, fuck these guys, man. That's a high-ranking individual in our organization. They're gonna be just fine. But they're over here talking a big game like it's nothing, bro. And I'm just like, don't you think you guys should be a little concerned? And their response is, the minions, the goons that they are, is, no, because the Colonel is there. And it's like, well, don't you think the Colonel should have a little bit more self-awareness and like humility, and they should be like a little prepared for things to go wrong? No, they won't. Don't you think that if they're at risk of being in danger because they're fighting a very strong person, that person's strong? I don't think so. Now, that's not what the character said. That's how I heard it. So
I love this so much.
Immediately going into it, I was like, man, fuck this Colonel guy, because if his lackeys act like this, he is going to be way worse. We're dragged over, we're captured, there's no way out. We go there. We meet the Colonel finally. I'm talking shit the entire time because his fucking goonies are talking him up the entire way there. I'm like, I can't wait to see this guy. I'm gonna fucking be so mad. I meet him, and of course he's the exact pompous dickhole that I imagined him to be. And he's over here fighting with somebody, and then of course the person that they're fighting with, who's on our side, is on the back back pedal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to step in and try to stop the fight. Me stepping in trying to stop the fight distracts the person who is on our side. They get beat, and then now the person looks at me, the fucking Colonel. He looks at me like, oh, it wasn't even a sweat to me to begin with. It wasn't even competition. If I wanted to, I could have killed her. And I'm over here looking as a player. I'm like, man, fuck this guy, bro. I'm gonna absolutely kill the shit out of this guy. And I'm talking to my in-game brother, real life friend Josh, being like, oh, this guy's a fucking dick, bro. We should kill him. Josh is like, I actually don't think he's that bad. I feel like what he's saying is making sense. And he's talking about like this colonel guy is talking about like, hey, we're doing the right thing. We're freeing people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, no, because not only are you not on our side, you treat people who I see it as powerful as weak, and there's no humility about it. There's no bit of sensibility of like, yes, I had to prepare. She was a tough fight. I had to prepare. No, it's like, oh, it's like light work. I'm like, okay, you're not likable, bro. If we were the heroes, if we were the good guys and you were in our party, I wouldn't like you. If I had a player that was next to me acting the way that you're acting, I would not like them. I was like, everything about this guy's personality absolutely drives me up the wall. So I was talking shit the entire fucking time. And that's the one situation where I'm like, I was like, as a player, probably shouldn't have been breaking character talking shit as much as I was. But I was absolutely furious about this guy. And that's what he's talking about when he talks about the colonel. So anytime that you hear me flare up, mention the colonel, it's because he's the absolute worst fucking character to me. I hate him.
I love it so much, dude. I love how much you hate him.
Oh, absolutely. I had a similar vibe in your first iteration of your of Starfinder, where you had that old guy that we met in the desert planet, and I was just like, man, I don't fucking trust this guy. Of course, fucking everyone else wants to make friends and buddy with him, and I'm just like, I don't trust this guy. He's a fucking random old man that we met in a desert planet that's desolate. No, I don't think he's. If he's trying to pretend to be soft and weak and fragile, I'm not falling for it. And then I grabbed it, and then everyone was like, Matt, no, you've gone too far. You grabbed the cane from an old man, and then the old man's like, oh, I don't even need the cane to begin with. And I was like, yeah, see this guy, see this fucker? And he's like, and I'm just like, yeah, so, like if I took the cane from him, like he could probably kill me to like get it back, right? That's the point that I'm trying to give, is that this guy's not as weak and fragile and lovable as you guys make him out to be. And then the character was like, the old man was like, yes, if I wanted that cane back, I could easily take it back. Also, if I wanted to kill you, I could do that too. And I'm just like, amazing. I love when people show both their strength. Like, I love when they. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I love it because they're technically the same character. They're both older versions of the captain, although it's instead of being a future version of him in the past in campaign 2, it's just a different guy.
Yeah, I'm very much like, I don't mind powerful people. I actually really like seeing powerful people in games. I really hate when powerful people feel the need to express the fact that they're powerful, and it's for the same reason that I told Nick that I was like, as a criticism for his story writing, when he was like writing the bad guy, I'm like, the big strong bad guy who's super powerful does not need to justify to anybody that he's powerful. He doesn't need to show anybody that he's powerful. It should be understood that he's powerful. And if people don't understand that, then they get a taste of why he's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I'm like, that's how powerful people, that's the type of powerful people that I like. And I'm like, that's true power. Anything else, I'm like, oh, brother, you're not actually powerful. No, you're over here talking shit about somebody that you just beat in a fight, man. That's not powerful. Think anyone in the WWE or like MMA like beats up a guy at a bar and then walks off like, yeah, I'm that guy, and is actually like tough? Like, I don't think so.
What? I thought that happened all the time.
Yeah, probably. Actually, it probably does. What's his name? Colin McGregor? Conor McGregor.
Calling me beautiful.
Hey, man, when you're building campaigns, what's your process like? Let's talk about it.
So I'm building a campaign. Usually it's, I get struck with an idea. I'll talk about this Final Fantasy campaign I created that's been on an over-year-long hiatus, but that's okay. I had an idea of wanting to play through it, so I was like, oh, I really want to use these character stuff that I found. What's a Final Fantasy kind of like thing I can do? And I was like, oh, wait. One of my favorite stories in fiction is like that of apparently Final Fantasy V has a similar thing, and I had no idea. But Tales of Symphonia, there's a story of two twin worlds that rely on each other, and Final Fantasy likes to tackle a lot of topics that are like pretty big and out there. Like Final Fantasy VII is about life, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I was like, well, what do I think about life? What's something I think of? And I was like, oh, you know what? When I think about life, like living things, I kind of think about the relationship between love and hate. Which is why I've subtitled the campaign Amore et Odium, which is just Latin for love and hate. And I was like, okay, so, I love this twin world idea. So what if there's like this karmic thing, whatever happens in one world happens in like the opposite kind of like effect happens in the other. And then I went, okay, well, what's the end goal of this? So it would obviously be the major dramatic question is this system that these people have created with this twin worlds, is it just? Is it sustainable? Is it good for life? Which is essentially the theme. And the end game is, what will my players do at the end? Will they merge it? Will they eradicate one? Like, what's the end goal for them? What are they going to do? And then so I'm like, okay, I have my end goal. I have the question that I want them to answer, the conflict that I want them to resolve. Now let's get into how we set up the ball so I can roll it, which is how I came up with in our other question, I talked about in our Railroad versus Sandbox thing, I talked about the prologue that I did for this campaign, where I told them, hey, make some level 10 characters just so we can feel it out, have fun with these new classes, but also, it's like a little prologue. Let's get the story rolling. And I killed off every single player character. They had an NPC that survived because he's going to become an antagonist in the other one, and he's going to have a special relationship with the protagonists because he senses that they're reincarnations of them. And so I knew those are all the beats that I wanted to hit for the story. And so I set up the prologue. I have the ball rolling for some plot lines, and I have the end goal and some factions. So I don't necessarily create an entire world map. I'm not a very map guy, although I definitely should be more of one. That's on me. But I do have a list out of I do have a list out of every major nation that plays central to the story. I sort of create things as I need to, so I don't have a lot to do at once, because then I get intimidated by work and then I just don't want to do it a lot. So
for sure.
And I like leaving a little bit of room of improvisation. So that's why, and earlier I talked about how when I prep for a session, I like to just get the information that I know I'll need for that session, which will be in its own document with that session number. And then I'll have a tab open that's maybe the past one. And on both of those, I'll have an understanding of where we're at in the story. And then I will try to hit anything we need to hit, or if there's not anything major we need to hit, like if it's a break session or whatever, or they just did a major battle, then I just have world notes that I go through, or that I have, and then I just improv kind of what they want to do. So I set up my sessions with a beginning and an end, like I said, for that oval shaped DMing that I do. And I set up the sand in the pit so I know which path they can take, because they won't be able to do everything and they'll have to make choices one way or the other. But that's how I prep for a campaign. Matt, how do you prep for a campaign?
That's really interesting. When I prep for a campaign, I do the most at the start and the least everywhere else. So what I do is I start off with an idea, a concept. It's just with longer form campaigns like our critical fail campaigns, I do tend to just develop the world and then leave the storytelling to you guys, and we figure out the story as we go. I will discover where the story is off of how you guys play and who you choose to align yourself with. And then I will find that interesting thing and I will play off of that. But something that is also, and although that's how I start the campaigns, with, coming up with a whole shit ton of locations, coming in with a whole bunch of different, honestly, I don't even think about factions too much until like later into the game. I think about central, like huge alliances, and then that's it. I think when I build the campaign, I very specifically build based off of what the players' backstories are. That's why I'm very specific about players giving me their backstories early, despite the fact that that's not always the case. I build the campaign based off of how they play. So that's how the campaign will start. It'll start with who are your characters? Let me build around that. And then let me build this whole other world otherwise. And usually sometimes it'll be I start with the world first and I tell the players and then I fit them into there. But regardless, the story will be based around them. I don't think about what the big overarching plot is until later in the game. But what is something that is always the case is during the campaign, sometimes after a session or sometimes even during a session or on the way to a session, I'll have an idea that sparks in my head where I'm like, that would be fun. This little thing would be fun. And so I make a note of it. And then I think to myself, does it make sense? Is it too much? And then as we go through another session, I think to myself again, I'm like, does it make sense? Would it be fun? And if I think yes, then I slip that into the world somewhere and I go, hey, this little plot line, this little event that I've designated, this little time bomb that I've made, I'm going to plant this somewhere. And depending on how the players will play, we will find this time bomb and we're going to have a lot of fun. And if they don't, then they don't. But that time bomb is there. And sometimes what I do is I think to myself, you know what? If this is big enough to the plot where I'm like, hey, this is like a big thing that would happen that would affect the plot, I might have that time bomb go off and the player will be nowhere around. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What's like the motivation for that?
I like the idea that I've always said this. The players exist in the world. The world does not revolve around the players.
Mm-hmm.
The world doesn't stop moving the moment that you guys leave a scene. Let's say that for example, let me put this up there as an example. If I make it a quest line, let's say you guys you guys are somewhere, and then I have, for example, your father give you a letter, and he goes, "Hey, go fetch this thing for me," and you go, "Okay, I've received this quest. I will now not proceed with that quest." In my head, I could absolutely just abandon that quest. But if I think it's something that's important enough, I'll absolutely have the repercussions of what happens when that quest is not accomplished, when that quest is not fulfilled. I'll absolutely have those repercussions in my head, like, determined. It's the idea of, with everything that a hero could do, I keep in mind what would happen if the hero wasn't there.
Okay.
Yeah. So like if a town is burning and the hero is there, they might go into the town to try to put out the fire. But if the hero doesn't go in there, or just isn't even remotely near, or they just went the opposite direction, that town burns down. You know?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense. And when you go back to that place, it's gonna be burned down. And you guys might be like, well, what happened? Well, it burned down. Oh, when did that happen? Do you remember when I described to you that there was a smoke off in the distance? Yeah. Well, that was that town. Oh, I just didn't know that was, I thought that was just another thing. Right. But you didn't investigate. That's okay. You're allowed not to investigate. You have the autonomy to not do certain things. I never want to force you to do anything. But your decision sort of is the reason why you didn't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's the case. This is the world that we live in. And that might seem unfair, because sometimes I criticize myself because I'm like, that might seem unfair because it takes away the opportunity of choice to them. But then the other side of me swings right on back and says, no, they had the opportunity. They chose not to do it.
That is true. They chose not to investigate.
They chose not to go deeper, right? If the party was interested enough in this setting, in this town, they probably would have gone. Because they weren't, and they were more interested in something else, they focused on that, and they had a great time doing that other thing. They come back and they found this town ruined, and it's like, oh shoot, should I have sacrificed that other fun thing? No, the world keeps moving. You got one experience, you lost out on this other one, not a problem.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize, for me, when it comes to campaign, yes, it's a lot of prep work in the beginning. The rest is improv, and it's a lot of moment by moment, sort of like, hey, I had this fun idea, let me put it in there. And for you?
So essentially, I say, what's the major theme that I want to tackle? Okay. How do I want to end a dramatic question with that theme? And how do we get there? And what can I formulate around my players to give them as much space as possible, but also get where I need to get? Which often involves me navigating here's your main quest line. And I will also come up with alternate quest lines for you to do. Which I did want to ask, how do you approach stories in that way? Do you have a main quest side stories in mind, or is it all equal weight stories, or is there different ratio weighted stories? Like, what is it, man?
I have big problems and little problems.
Okay.
I have problems that if you leave alone are absolutely gonna rock your shit, and then I have problems where if you leave them alone, they're just kind of like, that's just kind of thing, right? Like, let me think of an example. If the party decided not in Critical Fail Campaign 2, if the party decided not to go to a meeting between the nations to establish peace, there's going to be pretty drastic changes.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't be there to witness why those changes happened. But that's a pretty big thing where I'm like, hey, that's a big ass quest. You should be there. If you don't want to be there, no problem. You don't have to. But just letting you know that big changes are going to happen because of it. Whereas if it's a smaller quest line, I might think of like, hey, I'll hint at it. I'll put the carrot on the stick and I'll wiggle it around. I'll put the worm on the hook and I'll dip it down and I'll shake it about a little bit just to see if you bite. But it's not the end of the world if you don't. What's an example of like a small quest line? An example of a small quest line in reference to what we've actually experienced is investigating into the murders of that would lead to this cult, this death cult, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the biggest thing in the world if you don't investigate those murders. Are you gonna have like? Is it gonna change the huge world around you? Probably not. But it'll inform you on something. That's the big thing with me, is if just about any quest that I give you is going to give you the opportunity to do something, or it's going to inform you about something.
Because you try to make everything worth it in small, or in any way possible.
Yeah, everything should be worth it. If you get, I mean, you guys are, anything that you do is like a big part of this overarching story and journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Odyssey wasn't all super crucial important stuff. Like at the end of the day, it was just one big ass journey if you really think about it.
The long way around.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm very much like everything is important, but some have big consequences and then some don't.
Right on. How can you describe to me how character creation fits into your planning? Like, how and when do you incorporate it?
When I'm DMing or when I'm a player?
When you're DMing.
So character creation from the player side.
Yeah. Because like you said, backstory plays a big part into how you create the world. So how and when does that occur when it does?
It occurs in the very beginning. When I read people's backstories and I hear it and I think, okay, can I work with that? My mind immediately starts running to a lot of different things. Admittedly, with your character especially, I think I remember saying this, but when you just told me conceptually what your idea was for your character, I immediately had this whole idea. Like all these scenes in my head, I was like, I had this great idea. But then you expanded on your backstory, and then I realized, oh, nothing that I had planned would work. No problem.
No, interesting.
Let's just rework it. Yeah. Originally, do you remember that place in campaign 2 where you got sent to after your brother's Zeppelin crashed?
Yes, you said you wanted me to start there.
I originally wanted you to start there, and I wanted that guy who ran that place to be a very big, important figure in your story. And I wanted it to be like, you get to choose who your father is. Is it the guy who contributed to your birth and sent you to have all these opportunities, or is it the guy who's just taking care of you?
Oh, is it
and is
like
giving you a chance?
Was he my Alfred?
He was essentially your Alfred. Yeah, 100%. He's a guy who was hired by your father to take care of you, but in like he was going to be an asshole the whole time. He's going to be a huge prick about it, but he was going to be like have like a soft part that he would show. Like he would be like mean kindness is what would be his character essentially.
Yeah, for everyone who doesn't know, my original pitch to my character was Iron Man, Batman, like trying to mix them in some way. So having
it was specifically that you had described siblings that also that like you guys would go to an academy or something. I think that was an idea.
Oh yeah. That I had. I was the last in line, and I was the only one besides my sister to not be interested in weapons manufacturing.
Right. And I remember my whole thing was like you were gonna start off in the academy having like a face off in this sort of like show and tell, but in this prestigious academy, it's not just a show and tell; it's a fucking duel. Because they're so used to weapons being the thing, and I was gonna be like, oh, you're gonna pull up with the armor, trying to duke it out with this guy with a weapon, with a gun. And before it was established that your brother had established the first gun, the Eldritch Cannon, I was just like, oh, this other guy would be the one who established the Eldritch Cannon.
Oh, LMAO.
Hence why later in the game I established, there's a guy who originally designed the Eldritch Cannon, and the permit for it was taken from him.
That's what happens when you have people in power.
Exactly. That's what happens when you have a company that specifically works with developing inventions that other people made at the expense of technically owning those properties. So, like with AJ, it was integral. It was like right off the bat, huge ideas. If your backstory inspires ideas to me, it will heavily impact this world. If your backstory does not inspire anything, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to get a whole lot. I hate to be this guy, but there are some times where I get backstories where I'm like, I can't do shit with this. And then as a result, the player does not get to explore their backstory as much. But as a DM, I have to create a story around their backstory anyways. So sometimes I do twists, and the whole plot arc is based off of the twists rather than the backstory itself.
Yeah, I do remember you telling me you had to do that with my friend Ed, who briefly joined our first campaign for its first arc while we were still seniors in high school. Where at the end of the first arc, to give context, first major arc, our first season, as we would call it, our first like 15 to 20 sessions, we found this cult, and we got this artifact that basically all showed us visions of the future. Not just visions of the future, visions pertaining to our character's overarching want. So I got a flashback in time to what happened to my mother. But my friend Ed, and then my backstory basically just was, I'm looking for my mother. She's disappeared. My father was dead. I was raised by my aunt, which honestly, I remember I said I was making myself Spider-Man, but Batman. But I literally just made myself Spider-Man, kind of.
Yeah.
Because I was raised by my aunt. But my friend Ed apparently had given, like, no backstory to Matt. And he got a fucking, like, subtle, like, dark message of, you're right, you're doing your job. Like, I was intrigued from the mystery that was Ed's vision, because apparently you were intrigued by the mystery of Ed's character. So you had to create something.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. He never showed up to another session after.
That's true. Well, he wasn't at the school anymore, so
yeah. There's a lot of moments where I set up storylines, and I'm like, this would be really interesting, really fun. But then the player just stopped showing up, and I was just like, I'll drown that idea.
You said you make major alliances.
Yeah.
I do this.
Was there a question in that? You're just mentioning it.
Sorry. I did the same thing. I essentially copied Fire Emblem Three Houses, which honestly was copied by Triangle Strategy. Let's be real, because there was an alliance, a kingdom, and an empire, and I did that for one of my campaigns that is an unknownly long hiatus, but it's been like over 2 years. And so I knew we were going to be on the east side continent, or the eastern continent, essentially Europe. And so I had those major factions, and then I just had some names and general layout, of the world. I kind of want to know what it looks like, even if I don't map it out. Do you, because you said you don't fill out everything, and neither do I, but like, what's the limit? Because I think you plan more than I do at the beginning, and I just want to know where the line is different between us on that.
The limit lies where my imagination stops.
Whoa, what a line!
Yeah, it's the purest way to say it. It's the moment I can't think of any ideas, I stop planning for that shit. For example, the Origin Unity in our campaign, I haven't planned shit for the Origin Unity in design because there's nothing outside of what I've already planned that's already interesting. I could go deep into it, but also you guys aren't exploring it, so why is there any interest in there for me? The interest lied when Big M's character was there, but she's no longer part of our campaign, so there's no point in exploring it further, and what's interesting is no longer interesting, so I wouldn't plan for it. I'm designing right now. I'm in the midst of designing 3 different campaigns. I want you to know. One of them is the one that I've established as Critical Fail Campaign 3. It's the one where you guys are going to be essentially big, strong bad guys. You're going to see what it's like to be bad guys, but that's going to be a whole campaign. I still don't know if that's going to be super, super long.
Oh my God. Wait, can me and you rant about how we think the campaign should have been different in a separate video?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. We can. Hold on, let me talk about it. Hold on, let me do the intro. Hey, man. What's an experience where you really in session 0 really wanted a campaign to be a certain way, but because of majority opinion you had to default to doing something totally different and therefore not making it the ideal that you wanted it to be?
Well, it happened this one time.
Yeah.
Oh man, we tried so hard for that for a 2-person campaign and we lost, and that should be a real separate topic we do. 2-person campaigns.
Let's establish what you mean by that. 2-person campaign not meaning as in it's 2 players. 2-person campaign is in each player has 2 characters they're playing.
Yes, 2 PC per person. Sorry. The appeal of the campaign was that we would get to have a like really big, super strong character, and then we would also there was a conceit of it at one point to be an academy where it's like, you know, you're starting out, and that idea had been out longer, and then the idea was introduced where it's like, oh, what if we were like super strong and powerful? I don't know at what point who said it, but then it was like, oh, what if the super strong, powerful character, what if they were like villains? Like, we don't really try to play as villains or darker characters, so like, what if we like went for it? And then it was, what if we were the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? And like, I was like, that's so sick. It's gonna be taxing on our group's imagination to be able to try to entertain ourselves with how bad we do in a sandbox campaign already than if we're already level 20 and even more powerful than that. And so I was thinking, oh, well, it would make sense to have our underdog characters and our super powerful 4 horsemen of the apocalypse character. And everyone was just like, nah, and let's just do the super big, strong, powerful villains. And then Matt and I were like, oh, yeah, okay.
Oh yeah. Let me explain to you precisely why I was a little disappointed about it. So I was the one who pitched the idea of it being like, originally it was going to be an academy, and then I thought, hey, we're all experienced enough D&D players. We've been playing for at least 8 years now. It's very, very possible for us to just have 2 player characters, because sometimes maybe you get bored of playing just the one. And then of course a lot of people were like, well, want to be like, it might be a little confusing to have 2 characters and like figuring out when to pace it, who like what, like we're gonna be really immersed in one and then have difficulty switching over to the other one. And then I told them this, I was like, I have confidence in my level of DMing to be able to manage that well. You don't have to worry about that pacing. Leave that to me, I'll take care of it. But then when the idea came up of, it was, oh, let's have 2 player characters. One of them will be the classic underdog hero that levels up and grinds to get to higher level, and one of them will be a stronger, naturally higher leveled villain character. And the idea that's really interesting is that you guys are going to be playing the villains of your own story, and you're going to be doing the things that combat what your underdog hero character is experiencing, which means that if you like an NPC, you may have to play a scene where you as the villain are going to have to do something to that NPC. And vice versa. If you're the villain, you may have these henchmen that you have that maybe you get closer with, that get killed by the heroes, because as heroes we don't care about who we're killing as long as they're bad guys, right? That was the idea. Then I had the sudden spurt of inspiration where I was like, what if, because there's 4 of you guys were the 4 horsemen? That'd be really fun, really cool. And then I put that in, and I was like, what if I give you super busted abilities? That'd be fun, because that's what I do for bad guys in my campaign. When I make them really strong big bad guys, I give them extra abilities. Let me give you an extra shit. And then they got super busted, and don't get me wrong, I think it's really interesting, the idea for the 4 horsemen characters. But the idea was then said, hey, don't you think it's like not fun to be the underdog heroes at that point? Isn't it clearly more fun to play the big strong bad guys? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't think it's necessarily more fun. I think the idea of having all the power in the world to do anything that you want is only fun if you have something to combat that. But if there's no conflict, then there's nothing fun about that. But then I was told, oh, but it's not, we've already done basic level 1 to level 20 D&D. We've already done the underdog story. It's not fun to do the same thing again. And then I thought, well, okay. So then if that's the case, you just want to play the big strong bad guys? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, okay. So so then, okay, gotcha. So we're not playing the good guy and the bad guy. We're just playing the bad guy. Yes, that's what we want. I'm like, nah. I mean, that's fine if that's what the players want. But in my head, I'm like, it's way more exciting. There's way more nuance and way more complexity to the idea of playing the good and bad side of the same story. You get to decide what your story is to the fullest. It's the definition of Sandbox. You get to design every facet of your story, but you get to have a DM who's there to sort of show you what your actions do on both ends of the story. But they didn't want that, and that was a bummer.
So we killed them. No.
I intend to. No. What was more frustrating? Here's what's more frustrating: that they said, that we agreed upon the idea that, hey, if the playing the villains gets boring, yeah, we'll switch over to playing heroes. And I'm like, yeah, so
that's exactly.
So you still don't want to play 2 characters. The idea is that once you get bored of playing the villains, you're just gonna switch sides and just entirely only play the heroes. That's worse than the original idea we had planned. And it's way fucking harder to incorporate a story where you're playing if let's say we did do the 2-player thing, we picked it up starting from when you guys get bored of playing the villains. Are you guys ever going to want to play the villains? No, because you already got bored of them. So making a 2-player character per player story is much harder if we start later in the campaign when we're already invested in these villain characters. And it's like, yeah, but I can really just do whatever I want. So like every single situation, every fight ends in 1 round, like any encounter, people just give us what we want. So it's kind of not fun. I guess we'll switch over to playing the heroes, and I'll be like, yeah. Problem is, I didn't have any chance to plan for the heroes because none of you guys designed heroes, because you wanted to leave it up in the air on whether or not you guys actually wanted to play heroes. So story's going to be a little tough now.
Breaks my heart.
That's my rant. That's my rants about that. That's my rant. Is that
this is our D&D rants. Listen, we love our group. I think we'll have fun, but I think they missed out on having more fun.
Yeah, they missed out on a lot. I tell you, in what experience will you ever get to play 2-player characters again? You'll never.
Campaign 8.
And what this group has essentially said is that we don't ever want to play that.
So sad.
Bums me out. Yeah, I want to say as well, the 2 other, I said I'm designing 3 campaigns right now. One of them is the ones where you're playing sci-fi setting, your villainous characters. I have 2 other ones. One, I'm finally officially designing Heroverse again. Heroverse being a campaign that we ran a long time ago, where the idea is we are people who woke up and got powers one day and we are super powered. No longer will it be us as individuals having superpowers. Instead, there's actually going to be a story about it. And it's probably going to be a little bit shorter form campaign. So there might be more railroading. Just maybe.
Hell yeah. I mean, Heroverse was always a bit more railroady because it was always shorter.
It was a little bit more, yeah. Yeah, it was a little bit shorter, yeah. So Heroverse is going to be one of the shorter campaigns, I imagine. But it's multiple shorter seasons.
Nice.
Is my plan for Heroverse. Also, I started designing once again that that dark fairy tale setting as well, which is a campaign that Nick's already running. Nick, the guy in our campaign, good friend of mine, good friend of ours, very good at what he does. Made a wonderful campaign based off of a game that he's developed or conceptualized. But I was also interested in that. And I have my own ideas and own little twists. And I've been making a whole shit ton of ideas of what my interpretation of Fairy Tales Gone Dark would look like. And I've got to say, lots of really fun ideas with that one too. Starting you guys at level 1 for that one.
Oh, wow, level 1.
Yeah, starting at level 1, the idea, my concept is that it's very, so leveling will be very unique in that campaign because it's not going to be like the party fights together, they all get XP and or like they all level up through milestone, right?
Mm-hmm.
My idea is when you guys defeat a creature, only one of you guys will get the level up from it. You guys will level up. You won't get XP. You'll just one of you guys will level up.
So what brought you to that decision?
Because I wanted to, in this dark setting, that there's. So I'll give you an idea. So this is just concept wise. It's not a twist. It's what the whole campaign's based off of. In this fairy tale land, suddenly people are going missing. And alternatively, some people have become corrupted by something that is making them much more horrific versions of themselves. The idea being that there is this thing called corruption, which is like essentially this ink spot that is going across the land and infecting certain fairy tale characters. And what is happening is that when they're corrupted, they're much stronger than when they're not. They're much more powerful, and they're for many much more devious.
Mm.
And the idea is that when you defeat a creature, you kill a creature that has been corrupted, which will probably be any creature that you kill, has been corrupted, that you have the opportunity to take in some of that corruption to become more powerful in of yourself. That you don't have to. If you choose to, you can tackle it without taking in that corruption and risking becoming a monstrous creature that way too. But if you don't, you're gonna have to be a lot smarter about how you go around things. I imagine like a bunch of kids running around, and if they're able to finesse their way to defeating a big strong bad guy, they can absorb that. One person can absorb that corruption and can become stronger. The reason why I said specifically one person is because I wanted to create this idea of, once you have power, you kind of want to keep gaining power. And for the people around you, they'll see that you're getting more powerful and they'll think, well, I also want that power. And so at some point it starts being, less of let's save people and more so of let's kill people to get stronger. Big concept point. This is a big idea that was like one of my initial ideas. When you level high enough to get to level 20, your character is no longer playable.
Because you're that far corrupted?
Because you've been so far corrupted that you're no longer a character that you as a player can control. They are now a corrupted creature in this world. And then you have to make a whole new character. And so the idea is, when you want to get stronger so much that you keep getting yourself higher and stronger in levels, at some point it's going to be hard to stop that. And if you can't control yourself from taking in more corruption, then you'll lose yourself. And then you get to play another character, right? So let's say that you decide, hey, maybe I kind of want to play some other fairy tale character. you can absolutely grind the shit out of that one character, get them as strong as they can be, experience what it's like to be super fucking powerful, and then fucking explode. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So for Fairy Tale campaign, that's my idea for that one. I have a lot of fun planning for that one. I had an idea with the Cheshire Cat, where Cheshire Cat was going to be a big fucking hulking cat creature that can go invisible, sort of like the Predator.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and so the idea, their whole idea is that I think my concept for the Cheshire Cat was specifically it goes around looking for trying to get people to acknowledge its existence, and once it finds someone who looks at it and it catches them looking at it, it goes over and it absolutely devours them.
Does all of this stuff tie into a central theme that you could like? Do you have like a theme in like a couple words or something?
There is a theme. It's hard. I guess I'll just say it. The theme is that sometimes in life you want to rewrite a story to make it the way you want it, either by making it more gritty or by making it more lighthearted and more, easy for the characters. Sometimes you want to write the story to make it more easy. Sometimes you want to make it harder. But these stories and the way that they've been relayed to us and the way we grew up with them are the way that they are for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we try to twist the story to fit our own personal imagination, sometimes we fail to realize that we're potentially ruining something that's really good already as it is.
Gotcha. That's good.
Yeah, it's a big telling of like growing up, as well as like duality, right? You can't have it all good, because if you have it all good, then what happens to all the bad things? And when you try to make it all bad, what happens to all the good things, right? You want to find that healthy middle ground, which is what a lot of fairy tales already have anyways. Don't mess with a good thing is essentially what that storytelling is. But it's hard not to. It's hard not to mess with a good thing when you find yourself with the capability of doing so.
Yeah.
I had an idea for Knights of the Round Table as well.
Ooh, that's where my Merlin character comes in.
Yes. It's basically anytime that I see a creative decision and I'm like, I think I could do something different with that, is anytime that's what sparks my imagination for D&D.
So anytime you see us do something, you're like, I would do something different, and then you just write that down and
I'm like, yeah.
Just like
when I see Merlin, the way that you play him, and I'm going,
yeah, you just have all of our characters written down on a sheet, and you're just like, well, this is how I would do it. And then it's just a whole campaign based around it.
Yeah, and then I look at Binyef, who is Josh's character for Scarlet Dawn, which is our fairy tale based campaign, and I would just like cross that out.
Mm-hmm. You're like, I'll just do a different Sandman.
No. It's just that's not a name I would ever use. First off,
you could get away with it more than we could.
Yeah, it's true. He could. I really love our characters for Scarlet Dawn. I really love our characters for Critical Role Campaign 2. And I look forward to seeing all these extra characters that we make in the future, as well as the campaigns we have. We just got to have the sessions.
Yeah. We always find ourselves in a little bit of a rut, but we always get out of the rut, which is more than I can say of other people's campaigns that I've heard. So we have that going for us.
Because above all else, what we have among any other campaign that just falls apart, persistence and loyalty.
That's right. I don't play other D&D games because I'm always putting this one in priority.
Yeah. I could play other ones. But if I played other ones, I'd have to play it with brand new players, and I'll say this: it's not easy navigating around a new set of players, because you've got so used to with one that you've been playing for a very long time.
Yeah.
Anyways, we've been going on for quite some time. We should probably cut that off there. I want to say we'll tune in next time, and we'll probably have more hot takes and more decisions and more fun topics to talk about and more opinions next time on Split Decision.
I'm just split up.